When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey folks, before we get started, I just wanted to offer a warning that due to some technical difficulties, the audio quality in this episode may be a little robotic sounding in some places. We're certainly sorry about that. That said, let's go ahead and dive in. Hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and Oregon Live, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Kiara Profena. Together we take you on some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today we're hopping back on the train, taking a trip all the way to Vancouver, BC.
That's right. Dedicated listeners might remember that 1 year ago, I think like exactly 1 year ago, we did an episode on taking the train from Portland to Seattle and why that's often a better way to travel up the I-5 corridor. This year, one of our colleagues is one-upping us with an Amtrak train trip from Portland to Vancouver, BC.
On the podcast with us this week is life and culture reporter Veronica Nocera to tell us about her big trip. Veronica, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Hello.
Well, very excited to hear all about this, Veronica. This is something I feel like I've dreamed of doing. I've thought about doing. I've I think I've gone as far as have the Amtrak page pulled up and price shopped it between flying and all this stuff. So I'm really excited to hear all about this. But so first of all, let's get the details here. It's when did you go and what brought you up to Vancouver?
Yeah, so I left the Friday after Thanksgiving, so the very end of November, and it was good because I agree. I feel like I think about taking a lot of trips and then they never actually really go anywhere. So this worked because it was kind of presented to me. I had two of my good friends staying with me the week of Thanksgiving, and then one of them was touring the University of British Columbia that weekend, and she was like, do you want to come with us? We're going to go anyway, so you should come with us. We're already going to be here. And she had been looking at trains because it was kind of cheaper and also a little bit more fun than flying. So I was like, yes, I will join you. And we did. We took the Amtrak that Friday from Portland to the very, very end. I think Vancouver is the last stop of the train that we took.
Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. That kind of sounds like the perfect trip pitch to you. You don't have to do any crazy planning. You just get to hop on with somebody and enjoy the ride. And how long exactly was that ride? It's a good few hours, right?
Yeah, it's about 8 hours. I think we left around 2:10 in the afternoon, and then we got there, I think, a little bit after 10 p.m.
That's a pretty late arrival to get into a new city. Did you just go straight to a hotel and pass out, or I don't know, did you hang out and enjoy the nightlife? What do you do at that point?
Yeah, we went straight to the hotel. So we got in probably around a little bit past 10, and then by the time we got through kind of customs and everything, it was about a little after 11, I would say. And I've been told, I think Sarastan was saying in the office, that it's easier to get through customs when you're taking a train than when you're driving in your own car. So it didn't really take that long. You kind of just stood in line with everyone on the train, and then you went through, and a woman asked you why you were there. And she was a little bit suspicious of us for some reason, but she let us through into Canada. Yes. And then we just took an Uber from the train station to our hotel in downtown. And I'd say we got there probably around maybe a little bit before midnight. and we couldn't crash immediately because we were starving. So we spent some time trying to figure out Canadian currency and the exchange rate, and then ordered Popeyes to our hotel.
Wow.
But downtown Vancouver was very, very alive and very, very neon lights and people out, like just at clubs and walking around. So it was very easy to energize ourselves on the trip, even at midnight, from just like the train station to our hotel.
Curiously, have you been to Canada before, or was this like your first time?
No, I have not. This was my first time in Canada. So that was very fun. That was also something I was excited about, even just for the weekend. And we kind of didn't really get to go too far outside of downtown, but there was a lot going on there. It was very fun.
Man. So what was I know that your friends were touring the university there. Did you like jump on them with that tour or did you go off and do your own thing?
I did not. We were there. We got there obviously Friday night, and then our flights out were on Monday, and they toured Monday. So their flights out, mine was a little bit later, or mine was a little bit earlier.
Mhm.
So
So just sort of like you got the weekend then, the Friday to Monday in
pretty
BC. Well,
much.
so like yeah, what did you do? What did you eat? Tell us all the details here.
It's fun. Yeah. So, like I said, our hotel was downtown. So we basically stayed in that area, but it was really big. And I feel like most similar to New York in a way, which I feel like it's both annoying and makes sense to compare everything to New York. But in terms of there like always being people out like all hours of the night, and there were like constantly like things open and going on. But yeah, so we did kind of just some walking around and shopping. We went to like the Vancouver Chinatown area. That was one of our fun dinners. We got like Chinese barbecue, and that was super delicious and super fun. Um, we went to the movie theater and we saw Wicked for the second time on our trip when in Vancouver. I got poutine from a food cart, which was super exciting. That was my brief authentic Canada experience, and I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, kind of just
What
like,
did you think of the poutine?
I thought it was good. I can definitely, I would say, I guess it wasn't like world changing, but as like a 1 a.m. food cart, like walking back somewhere at night, it was really good. It was warm, which was great because it was super cold outside. It was salty, and it had potatoes and also cheese and also gravy, which are like three really amazing things to go together. I think that if I lived in Canada, I can understand that probably being like a recurring go to late night snack option.
Absolutely. And like having that couple few days in Canada, was that something that left you like wanting to go back for more? Like, are you curious to see other parts of Canada or do other things?
I definitely am. I really, really liked it. I really liked how like just busy it was, but also I think there's like a lot even just in Vancouver that I didn't get to do. One thing that someone had mentioned to me like after I got back was Stanley Park, which I think is in Vancouver, kind of like a Vancouver adjacent. And I was looking at photos and it just looked really, really great. I didn't really get out to any more of like the naturey outside activities. We kind of did like thrifting, window shopping, eating, but like kind of pretty centralized to downtown. But it was really gorgeous. I mean, it was really cool. Obviously, like even like walking like downtown, like we were walking to one place that was called like Water Street, and it was kind of like by a river, but also like you could see the mountains and stuff out in the distance. And that was like a cool dichotomy. I mean, like I had never even really seen mountains like that until I moved to Portland. So it was especially cool to be in like a new place where there's like all of these high buildings, but then also like in the distance, it's just this really gorgeous horizon. So I feel like I really enjoyed it and I would like to go back.
One of the things we talked about when we talked about the train trip to Seattle is like taking the train is great and it's fun and a different way to do it. It does put you in a city where you are relying on public transportation instead of having your own car. And I just speaking for myself, I can feel both like freed up by doing public transportation. Like, oh, I get to like check out the buses and the trains and all this stuff. And also like, yeah, you're talking about this stuff that's sort of more farther afield in Vancouver. And you're like, boy, it would be nice to have a car to go see some more of this other stuff. Did you feel any of that tension at all in Vancouver, or were you like totally chill with, getting around town?
I think that definitely, mainly because we were kind of contained to that downtown area, it wasn't a problem at all. It was pretty easy to sort of walk around to places. And then we had taken the bus a couple times. I think we took it back from Chinatown one afternoon when we had just like kind of walked all the way there and then didn't want to have to make the walk all the way back. But there definitely, I think there were a few instances where like we had just Ubered from one location to another. I think more so because it was kind of a new place. So it was kind of, we didn't really have time to figure out also the public transportation. But I think that it still we would have been able to get around even if Uber, for example, like wasn't an option. Like the one time that we did take the bus, it was pretty simple and it was pretty easy to kind of just look it up and figure it out on a whim. Like, okay, we can get on here and it'll take us like right here to our hotel, or at least like adjacent to our hotel. And yeah, I didn't go out to the University of British Columbia, but I know when I was looking, like there was still a way to get out there on, I think, a bus. I don't know if it was one or two, but it was definitely a little bit of a longer trip. It was like maybe more like closer to an hour as opposed to like the 10 minutes that we had spent like kind of just getting from Chinatown back to like our more central downtown hotel. But I think that it kind of gets a little bit harder, I think, when you're staying places for longer times, because then you kind of start looking like for larger circles of areas to get to. But it seemed like in terms of like touristy destinations, like I think if we had wanted to go to Stanley Park, I feel like we would have been able to take public transportation there because they seem to have like a pretty reliable system, especially for places that people are going a lot of the time. And I think we only took the bus. I think that they have a subway that's underground because I was sort of seeing the entrances. So I would have been interested to also try that out, but we didn't get to.
Yeah, and you mentioned buses were pretty reliable. So during your trip, including the train ride there, did you have any like hiccups or delays? Did anything go wrong while you were using public transportation?
It was pretty good. Like I said, we only took the bus sort of one afternoon, so there wasn't too much opportunity to mess up, but it worked out that time. And it also worked, I guess, that we didn't really have a lot of specific times of places we had to be, like especially with the train, since it was already supposed to get in at like 10 p.m. It ultimately like didn't make a huge difference if we got there at like 10 or like 11:30. Like it was already, we were just going to go back to the hotel, eat dinner, and go to bed. But I thought the train was really good. It was relatively on time. I think maybe we were supposed to get in at like 10 and we got in at like 10:30 or something like that, but not I've had, I think, like long distance public transportations that have gone worse than that. So it was pretty good.
They can all go bad is the thing. I feel like there's this idea that like the train should be more reliable because it's like more reliable than planes, for example,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, I don't know, on the ground or something. But like, I've never have a friend who's like taking the train up Seattle and it gets canceled and they have to take a bus instead. It's like such a pain.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would think like, well, yeah, planes get canceled all the time. Flights get canceled constantly. This is just a part of like, transportation. But the thing I like about the train like I've had experiences on the train where it's come to a complete stop. I've barely noticed because I'm just like reading a book or in a conversation or whatever. It's not the same as like being on a plane stuck on the runway for, an hour. It's a different experience. It's more room. It's cozier. It's a different, delays on trains feel different to me. I don't know if you've experienced that as well.
I don't have a lot of experience on trains, and definitely not for that long, but I really enjoyed it, and I was really comfortable, which I don't think I would ever say about a flight.
No.
It's not that I hate flying, but like I would never say I like flying or have like flown and really enjoyed my time. But I really enjoyed my time on the train. I feel like time just moved a little bit faster. I find when I'm flying, it's like I'm constantly trying to get comfortable, and it's like, okay, let me try and close my eyes. Let me try and listen to music. And I'll be like, okay, surely it's been like 2.5 hours, and it's like 45 minutes.
That's so real.
What I really liked about the train, obviously, I feel like the seats were bigger, it was cozier, it helps when you're sitting next to somebody you know as opposed to a stranger. Obviously, I feel like that changes the experience. But it just like I didn't really do anything, and yet I was entertained and comfortable the whole time. Like I was trying to think about like my first, so because we left at 2, we only had like a few hours of sunlight, and then it got dark. The sun probably set at like 4:30 at that point because it was still setting ridiculously early. But for those like 2.5 hours, I didn't take out my headphones. I didn't fall asleep. I was just sitting there looking out the window, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time, like every single minute of it. It was really nice. I mean, like you were just going past like rivers and lakes and like these tall trees, and even when it was kind of more like highway road adjacent, it just like everything kind of looks cooler when it's whizzing past in the window. It has a nice blurry painted look. So I really enjoyed it. And then like the sun set, and it was kind of like twinkling over like the lakes that we were passing by, and my camera roll is like oversaturated with just pictures of me taking photos out the window. But it was really lovely. And a plane is never lovely, even if it's nice to watch it take off for like 3 minutes. But then I'm also like worried about my ears popping. There was none of that. It was just nice.
Yeah, really lovely sounds like a great way to describe a train ride. I've not taken the train to Canada, but I've taken the train to Seattle, and I know that even just that 1 3-hour stretch is like so scenic and beautiful just driving through that area. So I'm convinced that I need to take the train to Vancouver now. And so through that experience and on the way back, what was that like traveling back? Was it, kind of same experience or anything else different about it?
So unfortunately, I did fly back. Because I didn't want to take the train back alone and
Sure.
completely at night for 8 hours.
Is it like an overnight train to come back from Vancouver?
I don't know what the times are to come back, but I flew back. I think I left like at like 5 p.m. flying. And I mean, it was annoying because I had to fly to Seattle, which was like 45 minutes. And then I had to fly from Seattle to Portland, which was even less than that. So I definitely could feel it being a way more expensive and environmentally worse transportation option. But I think I wasn't quite ready to take the train for the second time ever at night by myself.
That's fair. There, I feel like this conversation keeps it coming back to like planes versus trains, because I feel like if you're going to Vancouver from Portland, you can drive. It is like a longer drive, but I think the most common option is probably for people to just fly, because it's not. I mean, again, you have that annoying Seattle layover probably in most situations. But yeah, it's the comfort factor. It's much shorter to fly. And I don't know how the cost shakes out. I guess I'm curious, like what was the cost breakdown of doing like train trip one way versus like a flight one way? Were they comparable? Was one cheaper?
The train was way cheaper. I think there's
Okay.
also the potential of like how close to the actual ride and flight. I bought my tickets. I probably bought them a couple weeks before. I would say I bought the train ticket first, and then I bought the flight. But the train ticket, I think, was like $75, something like that. Definitely, maybe like around under 80. And then my flight was, I think it was just maybe too soon to take off, but it was kind of impossible. It was probably more like 200, and that was for like the layover and everything. I think they kind of got, there was maybe a nonstop option, but that was like $300. So I was like, I can't do that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so like having those both experiences, one way on the train and one way on the plane, what do you think is better? I mean, what are like the pros and cons? How does that work out?
Yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of factors. I think I can understand. I think like the main one for me would be kind of like solo versus if you're with people. I think maybe now that I've taken the train once, like I would feel comfortable taking that same like 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. sort of trip up to Canada, maybe especially if I was like meeting somebody there. It really wasn't so bad. I think I would still have a good time on my own, but I can understand that it's maybe a little bit more boring or intimidating to kind of do this like really long train travel journey like over the border, because flying, I feel like it's something that people are familiar with. It's obviously a lot faster, so if you have limited time in a space, maybe you're going to want to do like a couple hours of flying and sort of still have the entire day, as opposed to an entire day of travel and then getting in almost at the next day. I think it worked for us because it kind of felt like part of the trip. It was like, okay, we had already been spending time in Portland. The second sort of level of our trip, we'll spend a weekend in Vancouver. And then on Friday, we'll do something we've never done before. And we'll take the train and we'll get some time looking at the window and it'll be nice. I feel like that's not really something you think about when you're flying. You're never doing it like, oh, this is going to be part of the trip. It's kind of like the annoying part in the middle to get from point A to point B. So I think in that sense, especially if you're driving or if you're traveling with people, or you're kind of less concerned about maximizing your time at the next location, or if you're spending more time at the next location, I think the train is a really good option. I mean, it's cheaper, it's not uncomfortable, and I think it kind of you get, especially if you can go at a time where there's maybe more daylight and you kind of have more time looking out the window and kind of just experiencing it like that. It really did. Like, I think of that as part of our trip was taking the train, which is nice. You don't really get that with travel, other than maybe like taking a road trip, but I feel like that's like a different thing, a little bit more familiar.
Wow. I love that, Veronica. That sentiment, I think that I'm just picturing you and your friends just hanging out on the train. Like I've seen people travel in big groups, so they get the seats that face each other with like the table in the middle and they're like playing cards or they're just like talking or having these deep, intense conversations. And yeah, you don't get that in any other mode of transportation. I feel like every time I fly, I'm looking out the window and thinking like this is like should feel like a miracle. We're like in the sky and we're seeing clouds and the ground from this perspective, but all I can think about is, God, it's so uncomfortable here. I'm cramped into this tiny little seat. And the train, you get a similar feeling of like you said, I loved your description of like the scenery whooshing by and like the sunset and the star, like that's so cool. And you get like space and you can move around more easily. And like bathroom is like 6 times bigger than a plane bathroom. Um, so there's something about the train that's just, I don't know. Like you said, yeah, it takes longer, but it's a whole experience of just being on the train. And like that, if that can be part of your vacation, then that's a great way to spend your time, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, and I liked sort of being able to get up and walk around more. I feel like I never really do that on a plane, but obviously the only reason you're getting up on a plane is like to go use the restroom. And I feel like it's never an enjoyable experience. It's like you have to like annoy the person next to you, and then like you're completely squished in like an inhumanely tiny little room with a toilet. But on the train, it was definitely different from I expected. There weren't the only carriage, I guess, that had like tables or a table with like seats facing each other was the dining car. But people basically like immediately went to the dining car and like I assume just set up shop for the full 8 hours and like never moved. So
Yeah.
there were also no windows in the dining car. So I feel like it's kind of like a give and take. But so we were kind of just like in the aisle together. We didn't have assigned seats. There was like two of us and then the third of us in the next one. And the train was pretty full. So it was like for most of the trip, like people were coming in and there were no empty seats. So you couldn't really move around. But then because we were the very last stop, the last few hours, I feel like it completely almost emptied out. And then it was like basically just the three of us kind of like just sitting in this empty train car, which was also extremely fun. But it was cool. Like we would kind of time it where every time we would get to a stop, one of my friends and I would like stand up and like walk the entire way to the dining car to see if any of the tables had freed up. And they never did. But walking up and down was kind of exciting. Even though you're like kind of moving around a little bit. It's kind of like surfing, but also you're just standing on the train. And also I've never surfed, so I really can't make that connection. But it was fun. You kind of got to move your legs around a little bit, and it feels more normal than doing that on a plane where you're kind of really supposed to be sitting down the majority of the time, if not all the time. And yeah, I think a lot of those things, even though it wasn't maybe exactly what I expected, like in terms of like you see like the tables kind of like where like four people can sit facing each other, like even though some of those specific details weren't there, other things still made it a lot more pleasant and exciting, especially when the car emptied out.
You've convinced me. I feel like I need to take this train ride. We don't have like many trains in Texas where I'm from, so being able to have access to that up here in the Pacific Northwest, it feels like something we should definitely take advantage of.
I agree.
I'm into it. I mean, the only thing that gives me pause is getting into town at like 10:20 or like, getting into like the hotel like at midnight. I think it's mostly because I have like a baby at this point, and that feels like insane to do. But it's otherwise it sounds like a great experience.
There's an earlier one. I guess I don't really know, but I feel like it's possible 2 p.m. isn't the only time that it leaves.
There is that. I was just looking at this while we were talking. There is some mixed service that Amtrak does, which is like I believe combination train and bus to get you places. That does go. It's like you can do like a 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., which is bad in another way. There's like other ways you can certainly do it. Or your mixed like sort of flight train is something that appeals to me too, like flying there and taking the train back from Vancouver, at least in the as I'm looking at the website now. You can leave at 7:15 in the morning and get back at 3:30 in the afternoon, and that feels pretty doable to me. That gives you that daytime train back to Portland. So a flying up to Vancouver, train back, maybe that's a way to sort of like cut costs and have that kind of more magical experience coming back also. So a lot of ways to do this. Very inspirational, Veronica. Thank you very much for coming on and talking all about this. It's a joy to hear about your trip and your experience.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Well, folks, that will do it for us for today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonian YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy this show, and if you want to support this podcast as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find all the details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@oregonian.com. This episode of the show was produced by me alongside Jamie Hale and Vicky Connor.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.